What's up, guys? Today I'm going to talk about ball speed, all right? Well, I shouldn't say ball speed, but point speed, okay? How much time you have to react from the first ball to the seventh ball, from the early 90s to the early 2000s and today. Now, of course, this is just clips and just an overall synopsis of the situation because it'd take a lot of data to figure out the whole thing. But what I wanted to show you was, is there a difference, a huge difference, between the 90s and today, okay, as far as how much time you have to react to each shot. So the first point I have is McEnroe and Becker, okay? With McEnroe and Becker, what I did is I started, and I did with all three. All 3 points took place at the Australian Open, and we started a timer on the first shot return to the 7th shot. I paused the clock, and it's when the ball touched the racket. McEnroe and Becker had a time of 8.05 seconds. Okay. The second point was Federer and Ferrero. They had a time of 7.80 seconds, and Sinner's time was 7.50 seconds. So, again, there's a geometry of the court you have to take into account. There is slices, like Federer and Ferrero had 7.80 seconds, but Federer sliced the ball twice, right? So 8.05 seconds to today's 7.50 seconds. So is that a huge difference? Not really, because again, you take into account the technology. That might be the difference between today and the past. If you played with 90s rackets, you know how much more powerful, even early 2000 rackets, how much more powerful today's game is and how much more of a sweet spot you have than the past. So when people tell me that the game is so much faster, I disagree with that. I think I think the game is heavier, okay? So look back to McEnroe and Becker. The ball is skidding off the court a lot quicker. The courts are faster. So the courts were faster. That's why I have a little bit more serve and volley. Versus even the 2000s, the early 2000s, I actually think is faster if I found something without slices, or pretty similar to today's game, because the technology, even though the technology was still older and not as easy to use, the courts were faster. And today's game, the courts are just so slowed down that the balls have to be a little bit heavier because they're cracking the crap out of the ball to make it go faster through the air. But once it lands, you can tell how it sits a little bit more. It doesn't skid out. And you kind of see that in Cincinnati right now, right? So in Cincinnati, the ball's so fast, people are really struggling. That's why Mannarino had so much success. So has the reaction time changed that much? No, it hasn't. I would actually make the case that the return time is actually easier because it grabs the ball more than in the past, again, which is why there's a little bit more serve and volley, because the courts are faster, and you're seeing that in Cincinnati. So overall, when people tell me the game was so slow in the early 90s, 80s, it really wasn't. If you can go out there and the difference to you is, if less than half of a second, and you're telling me that, those guys played so slow, I think you're being a little silly. I don't like, I'm a big fan of Andy Roddick and that served and stuff, but I don't like when these newer school guys from the 2000s stuff and 90s are talking about how much more amazing the game is. I think the game has changed. I don't think the game is more amazing in the sense of athleticism and stuff. I saw Edberg and these other guys sliding on grass back in the 80s and 90s, so I'm kind of confused when I hear that. And the other thing is, if you guys played on the different courts affect if you can slide or not. So yeah, I'm gonna play on I'll shoot a video on these courts. They're shot. This is the court material that was used at the Australian Open in the 2000s. You cannot slide as well on these courts. All right, so technology has also changed that. I mean, Edberg got to the net in one big jump with his split step right after his serve. So don't tell me those guys aren't as athletic as the guys today. That's just silly. Longevity may be because of, nutrition and all that stuff, but there's a lot of fallacies out there, and they want you to believe, they want you to watch today. So I think a lot of these guys are, quickly forgetting how good things were, and not giving the credit where it's due. So the game, yes, there were weaknesses, but there's also weaknesses in today that I see with technique all over the place that would be exploited if you had the materials that there were in the past. So let's not get it twisted, guys, right? So this is for all those young guys that are a little bit confused, right? Till next time.